Okay, good evening, everyone. We'll start now. I just have a short introduction before we hand over to the main speaker, so that should give time for the few additional people to join. Welcome to this month's event on UX in the food industry. I think it's fair to say the past few months have driven us to many things and many coping strategies, and food has probably made a big part of that. I can just see someone's raised their hand, so I'm just going to check and see if there's any issue there, so bear with me a moment. Okay, that seems to be no issue, so I shall continue. Welcome to those of you who are joining us for the first time, and certainly welcome to those of you who have been joining us over the past few months for these remote events, and also when we were in different circumstances and running our regular face-to-face events in London. Obviously, with the announcement this week, we still don't really have a timescale about when they will start again, but do keep informed with all our events by signing up for our newsletter. And if you haven't already, you can do that on our website. Just a little bit about UXPA UK. My name is Chris, and I'm the current president of the UK chapter of the UXPA International. We have been going for about 18 years supporting the UX industry in the UK. We are run entirely by volunteers, so none of us take any form of remuneration or salary. It all goes back into the community. Obviously, we are a bit more active under normal times, but we are doing what we can to keep going given the circumstances. So we put these events together in our evenings and weekends, and obviously cheeky breaks in our lunchtime from work. And if you would like to get involved, the commitment level is obviously varies. It can be quite a light touch, or we certainly have ways you can get more involved if you wish and you have some time at the moment. We tend to run events, workshops, and we have a very popular mentoring scheme. A date for the diary is the 22nd of October, and this date is accurate. Apologies, last month I did give the wrong date, but we will be looking at UX research through a different lens on Thursday, the 22nd of October. So variety is the spice of life, and we have a variety of speakers from the food industry this evening. As you can see, we have one of the traditional supermarkets, if you will, and then we have a couple of new kids on the block and challengers as well. So a good variety, and I'm sure all have very good stories to tell. In fact, I know so because I've been lucky enough to see some of the presentations in advance. Just in terms of how the evening will run, each speaker will talk for roughly about 15-20 minutes in that slot, and then we'll have Q&A afterwards. You can submit your questions using a number of ways. You can raise your hand in the participants panel, and then I will unmute you, and if you're confident and comfortable asking the question in person, please do so. In fact, we encourage that. It just makes the event feel a bit more engaging. So we will prioritize people who do put their hands up. You can also use the Q&A feature in Zoom or the chat feature, preferably the Q&A. And then if we are not able to answer all questions, perhaps the speaker will be able to answer the question when the other presentations are continuing. So, as I said at the start, we've all been turning to lots of ways to cope, and one of the themes from the last event was how crucial UX has become for so many providers, and I think we can all agree the food industry is one of those. You know, back in March at the start of lockdown, there were stories of supermarket delivery slots being filled up for months and months in advance, and obviously systems being put in place to prioritize vulnerable people. So a lot of industries, including the food industry, has had to adapt, and it's probably fair to say also many of us have looked at some of these services in different ways. I was going to include a shot of my Deliveroo history as part of the introduction, but when I looked at it, I was ashamed. So unfortunately, I had to keep it out. But let's just say my usage since March is absolutely nothing like what it was before March, when I'd barely used it, and now it's fairly regular. So now it's become more of a habit, and we'll see whether that habit is maintained as things change. This slide illustrates a lot of the ways the food industry has had to change. I already mentioned the supermarkets, but also restaurants have had difficulties, and at one point, takeaway was their only option. So if they didn't currently have a takeaway option or weren't signed up to perhaps a third-party provider, that was something they had to adopt very quickly, I think, probably in order to survive. And I'm sure that will be the focus or mentioned or touched on in one of the talks. And again, we have the overrunning theme for all of these remote events. We focused on how industries have had to change and adapt. And also, it's a two-way street. So as consumers, we've had to adapt and behave in different ways and change our way of thinking. And also the food service providers have had to adapt and change, and perhaps change the way they operate. And our speakers this evening, Christine, Alex and Ray, are going to walk us through some of their experiences and some of the stories they tell from the front line. So I'd like to hand over to Christine from Waitrose, who is our first speaker. Over to you, Christine. You should be able to share your screen now.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'll just try and share my screen. There we go. Can you all see that?
Yep, we can see that.
So thank you very much for having me. I'm going to start off with talking about 3 sections around the UX of Waitrose within the food industry. So first of all, looking at customers, the physical and digital shopping experiences, and then I'll go into a bit more detail around communication at the end. So firstly, looking at our customers. Undoubtedly, the last 6 months have been very turbulent time for everyone, and as a result, we've seen a huge shift in customers' shopping habits. These habits have been affected by lifestyle changes customers have had to make. For instance, we have one of our personas here called Anne. Her and her husband have had to be shielding, so started to order online, whereas before they would be shopping in store. On the other hand, there have been customers who have seen that recent events have opened up new opportunities for them. For instance, John here is now working from home, so he has a lot of free time, which he can then use to focus on cooking instead of eating on the go. By not commuting, thousands of customers now also see that they have more flexibility with getting food delivered, as they're more likely to be at home. We're also finding that customers are choosing to reset their priorities to what matters most to them. For instance, spending more time with the family they live with, or doing activities they could do during lockdown, such as gardening, cooking and exercising. And health has never been more important, where customers are looking more at where their food comes from and making sure that they look after themselves as well. With risks attached to socialising at the moment, we've also seen that customers have changed how often they shop for groceries. For instance, instead, Sarah here has adopted to doing one big shop rather than her multiple top-up shops she would normally do throughout the week. This also helps reduce the risk to her and her family. So this leads nicely on to talking about the physical and online shopping experiences, because where shopping in store was more of like a leisure activity, where customers would go into a few shops, meet friends for lunch, and then go and do their food shopping. Since the beginning of lockdown, grocery shopping seems to have become more of a task to complete, where getting food delivered is being considered a more convenient option by more customers. Lockdown forced many customers to shop online who were required to shield. This change in behaviour continues to benefit them as they continue to shield in order to prioritise their safety during uncertain times. For us, online is an extension of the in-store experience, and it's so important to make sure that both shopping journeys are consistent, and we get customers deciding to shop through both. One of the challenges I've particularly find as a UX designer, and I'm sure others do in this sector as well, is how to replicate the positive atmosphere and the experiences which customers have in store to online, and also the other way around. With the demand for deliveries rising, slot capacity can get booked up very fast, as I'm sure a lot of you are aware. And many customers have learned that booking a slot first ensures they get the best shopping experience. So this has become a priority for them when ordering online. So moving on to communication, these are some of the these are some of the principles the UX&D team who I work within at Waitrose have been focusing on, particularly over the last 6 months. It's important now more than ever that the website keeps customers informed of changes which are happening not only in store but online as well, because customers have tended to use the website as a place to find out what's going on with regards to a number of things, such as like food availability, store opening times, and restrictions in store and online. Making sure our messaging is consistent across multiple shopping journey touchpoints is always key to the team, but there has been more focus recently because we've been required to display more messaging and update it on a more regular basis. The tone of our messaging is also really important because we want to alert customers without scaring them, and is an example of how we're trying to replicate the partner customer interaction that they would find in store. We also don't want to disappoint customers, so to ensure the best customer experience, especially new or unfamiliar customers, when they add an item to their trolley, we're actively encouraging them to book a slot. That way we can ensure the customer is receiving a more personalised experience where product availability reflects the location and shopping method the customer has chosen. So something I've been working on quite recently around communication is our slot grid and how it might be perceived by the influx of new customers who have been coming to Waitrose website throughout the pandemic. So through conducting remote user testing, we discovered that participants who were new or unfamiliar customers to Waitrose.com were questioning as to how much the slots were, and because there was no cost displayed, participants saw this as though we were trying to hide the cost to them. They also indicated that this would make them feel uncomfortable and mistrust Waitrose. So working within Waitrose, it's easy for us because we either shop with Waitrose or we know that there's no cost attached to the slots, as long as you reach the minimum order spend. But for new and unfamiliar customers, even though the norm isn't necessarily what customers want, they have accepted and have come to expect that there's going to be a cost attached to getting their groceries delivered, because the majority of other supermarkets charge for this convenience. So what is in fact a benefit to our customers, not having to pay extra for delivery, can be perceived as negative, which is why, even though times are quite tough at the moment, it's so important to find a way to keep listening to our customers. By analysing quantitative and qualitative feedback we received through this user testing, we were able to define the problem into a user-centred task to solve. So how can we communicate our slot proposition to new and unfamiliar customers to instill trust and transparency of information? I then asked a few members of our team from front-end development, UX and UI design to come together remotely and collaborate on developing a solution. So through doing a holistic overview of the user journey, specifically for booking a delivery slot, points were identified where we could improve our communications to enhance the experience without putting off or distracting customers who were already familiar with booking a slot at Waitrose. So looking at the entry points for booking a slot, these are predominantly CTAs, where we take the customer through a series of stages to help them determine what slot type they might need. There isn't a lot of room to add additional information to these CTAs, or additional information such as all the different slot types and the minimum order spends. So we chose to leave that as it is for now. Moving on to the service selection page, with the key information being quite small, it's possible that customers are seeing the home delivery and click and collect headers and just making their decision from there without reading the text below. Having it as sentences means customers aren't able to easily scan the information to inform their decision. So another UX designer had previously looked at redesigning this information a while ago. So we chose to build upon these redesigns where the information has been broken down into kind of bullet points, encouraging the customer to read it before clicking on the individual CTAs at the bottom, as opposed to clicking the whole panel being clickable. We also looked at the choose your delivery address section, but it's at this point where we want customers to make sure that they are choosing the correct address. We don't want to distract them with too much information, and choosing the right address is not only important to them, but also important to us too. So moving on to within the choose your slot section, we knew that from user testing that customers read the line saying choose your slot, so this section here. So we looked at including the word free in this action messaging before they reach the slot grid. But free can have a double meaning. Were we saying free as in no cost, or free as in available? In fact, we were saying both, but allowing for a double meaning means that we're not being 100% clear with our customers, who could, for example, perceive choose your free slot as meaning choose from our available slots. We also thought about using the word free within the slots themselves, where customers were familiar with seeing the cost of a slot. And this way the customer would be more likely to understand that free meant that there was no cost attached. This would communicate well with customers who were unfamiliar with Waitrose but familiar with ordering online elsewhere, but new customers who potentially are not used to seeing this could think that it meant we were saying that the slot was available instead of saying that there was no cost attached. There would also never be a slot with a cost to allow the customer to compare and associate free with meaning that there is no cost for the slot. Using £0 within the individual slots was also looked at, but this became an issue because although it would look okay if there was only a few slots available, when there was loads of slots available, it would become extremely distracting on the page, where it's important for us and the customer that they can choose the correct slot. So moving on to the confirmation section, we decided to highlight free delivery and indicate the minimum order spend for the specific slot types the customer has chosen underneath the action messaging. This in turn communicates the recent change to the delivery minimum order spend for new as well as existing customers, which has dropped from £60 to £40. We also decided that the messaging on the confirmation page could be made clearer to indicate to customers that they are only able to reserve their slot for 2 hours, but in order to secure it, they need to check out with at least the minimum order spend in their trolley. So this is how it will look. There are some changes that have already been made to the website. We have separated the information to tell customers that about the slot being reserved and then the slot being secured after they have gone through the checkout. We also felt that repeating the messaging around free delivery on the section would be beneficial. So within the whole journey, we've repeated free delivery 3 times. Using repetition aims to communicate the message more effectively and reinforce it, especially as it's a benefit for us, for the customer, and also a key driver for choosing to shop online at Waitrose. I now have a short video I'd like to play for you and hope that the sound works as well. It really sums up the last few months at Waitrose.com and also introduces you to some of the team that work behind the scenes as well. So if I start playing it, if you could signal to me if you can't hear it, that would be brilliant.
There's no audio at the moment, Christina.
Sorry, what did you say?
There's no audio. There's no audio at the moment.
Okay, let me try again.
If you have an external monitor plugged in, I would suggest unplugging that, like an HDMI cable. That can interfere with the audio. Otherwise, just check the volume level on your computer, and it should play.
Does that work now?
There is something, but it's quite quiet. If you can turn that up a bit.
Yeah, I'll try and start it again, because I mean the audio isn't essential, but let me see if I can. And thank you for bearing with me on that one. And that's the end of my presentation. I'm happy to answer some questions.
Thank you, Christina. We'll all give you a round of applause. There is some questions already in the Q&A panel. So the first one is from Sarah Mahoney. Hi, Christina. You spoke a lot at the start about how your customer behaviour changed quickly with lockdown. Were you also working with the planners, merchandisers who manage intake, purchase of the products? We're looking at improving different areas of the Waitrose user experience. And if so, did they influence any design decisions with their consumer knowledge? So quite an in-depth one there if you need to take a moment to read that and process it.
Yeah, so we have the UX&D team, but within our team we work in the specific product areas as well, and so that includes the planners, the merchandisers for each individual kind of section of the website. It is always a collaborative effort, and especially through difficult times as well. We need individuals' insights so that we can make especially for a UX designer like me, it's vital for making sure that we're not only listening to our customers but also listening to the business as well, and making sure that we can combine them and making sure that we can the technology's there that we can improve the experience for our customers as well. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. I did see someone raise their hand, so if they'd like to do so again, I can unmute them and you should be able to speak. I'll just give you a moment to do that if you wish. Yep, okay, Anna. So Anna, I'm going to allow you to speak now. Anna, over to you.
Hi, Christina. Thanks so much for the talk. You talked about sort of learned behavior patterns from customers, and I was wondering whether you've seen customers have certain design expectations from doing other online shopping, in particular like supermarket shopping, which you've had to sort of work around in terms of like what they're expecting from different, like lots of different online supermarkets.
Yeah, definitely. So when lockdown happened, obviously the influx of customers coming to online, they have experiences elsewhere and they maybe weren't able to get a slot with the supermarket that they regularly shop at. So there was a bit of a demand for food and a bit of panic buying as well, which meant that customers would go to different supermarkets. But when they go to different supermarkets, obviously they've got their original expectations of where they've previously shopped at. So we're always doing competitor analysis on what is the norm customers. So for instance, I talked about the cost of slots. So a lot of other places charge per slot for delivery or for collection, whereas we don't, but the customer has become so it's become normal for them to have to pay extra for a slot. So yeah, when they come to us, they expect to see certain things, whereas when we don't show them or we don't communicate it in the right way, that can become a problem for them. So yeah, it's really important to make sure that we're not necessarily, we're all kind of, and especially during these difficult times, it's about working together as well. So there was I can't remember the name of it now, but all the supermarkets kind of collaborated to make sure that we were feeding the nation, and that we were being more collaborative rather than competitive. So that was a really positive thing as well. I hope that answers your question, Anna.
It does. Thanks so much.
Hi everyone, I hope you can hear me. Sadly, this hasn't happened before, but Zoom has crashed on me. So at the moment, I'm not able to do anything. I may have to close the meeting and restart it. I'm going to give my computer a few moments to respond. Again, I do apologise. This hasn't happened before, but was always bound to happen at some point, I think. So I'm just going to try and get things back on track. Apologies again.
Would you like me to read out one of the questions, Chris, and answer it that I can see in the Q&A?
Yeah, if you'd like to take that, and then I can try and get my computer back on track. Yeah, if you want to take that one in the Q&A.
Yeah, so someone's asked, how does the grid work on mobile? How do you reduce repetitiveness of fully booked on a much smaller screen? So this is something we're really working on, because obviously fully booked is becoming what customers are usually seeing on our slot grid at the moment. On mobile, so what I showed you is on the web, so we've got 5 kind of you can see 5 days worth of slots, but on mobile you can only see 3, and that's exactly the same for the app as well. But the app allows you to scroll through the touch screen, whereas on the mobile you have to click a CTA to get to the next like 3 days. So the repetitiveness of fully booked, there's a bit of customers, if we don't show that slots are fully booked, then and we just don't show those dates, then customers think, well, am I missing something? Is there a problem with the app or the website? So actually showing them that it is fully booked is beneficial to them. But I can completely sympathise that seeing fully booked on all of them isn't necessarily the best user experience. What we do through the date picker, so they can click the date picker and they can see it.
Completely.
It indicates
It just
when
says
the
it's
date.
crashed. Do you want to try and wait for it to respond or restart?
Yes, so I hope that answers your question, Anonymous. Chris, have you managed to get back in?
Hi, Christina. It's Lena from UXPA. So Chris can't mute himself and unmute himself, so that's the problem we're having right now. But I think we can move on to our next speaker, who is Alex, who should have full control. If everyone wants to give a round of applause for Christina, that would be great. And Alex, if you are ready to share your screen, you could go ahead and do so.
Okay, cool. Let me just take control here. Can everyone hear me all right?
Sounds good.
Cool. Great. And also, can you see my slides now? Okay, cool. So hey, everyone. I'm Alex. The title of my talk today is going to be Helping Restaurants Help Themselves. And I'm going to walk you through some of the ways that we at Deliveroo build tools and products that help our restaurants and our partners grow their business. And I'll particularly share some insights onto how we've been doing that recently with COVID-19. So yeah, I'll give a short 1 or 2 minutes intro to myself and to how our team works at Deliveroo, as well as what it's like to specifically design for restaurants, what products we're responsible for, and kind of how we work. And then I'll also go into a specific kind of case study around COVID-19, which is called Menu Manager, and then I'll open it up to any questions. So I'm Alex Manthei. I'm a product designer for restaurants at Deliveroo. I used to be at Trainline before Deliveroo, and I kind of struggle to think what the commonality between food and trains is. So if anyone has any ideas, the only thing I can really come up with is that they're both like incredibly vital areas of our lives. Transportation and food, they're so important to us. And especially during the pandemic, it's been actually just very much an honor to work kind of in this industry and to support restaurants at this time. broadly at Deliveroo, we have a kind of an interesting structure with content research and design. We're part of an experience team, and that's made up of product designers like myself, as well as user researchers and content designers, which you may know referred to as kind of UX writers. And we're all kind of equally weighted within this team, collaborating together. And because we use tools like Figma, everyone kind of has this level playing field, and we can all just kind of come together and work in our respective disciplines. And then broadly, in terms of that kind of company structure, we have this really unique three-sided marketplace, which includes the consumer apps and website that I think all of you probably know and love. And that's kind of probably the area that gets the most kind of exposure out in the world in terms of what it looks like, what the UX is and how it works. But then obviously we also have a delivery side of the business, which includes an app or apps for writers and the kind of underpinning logistics network that kind of makes that work, what actually kind of means that you get the food that you've ordered on the consumer app. And lastly, the restaurant side of the business, which is what I work on every day. And this is an amazing side. I mean, I'm biased because obviously without restaurants, we wouldn't have any of the amazing food that we're able to deliver to you. But it's just an amazing side of the business because of the huge diversity in our partners. So everything from like really small mom and pop local restaurants to huge national, international, global chains, and everything in between. So there's not any one type of restaurant really. And that's what makes it so exciting to work in this side of the business. And just a note, one of the things that we do on the restaurant side is that we don't really refer to users. And this is largely because of what I just mentioned. These aren't really just kind of individuals. Oftentimes when we talk about what would normally be referred to as a user is actually, I think, better described as a partner, because these are all restaurants that have partnered with us. And they can be, you know, made up of front of house staff, chefs, bartenders, small business owners, kind of marketers, or you know, on a larger scale, more corporate structures as well. So in order to kind of really kind of capture the gambit of how many people actually are partnering with us, we use this term partner. So I'm going to be using that kind of throughout the talk. So anytime I say partner, just imagine that I'm talking about someone who's using our products. So what do those products look like? And I think this is another exciting thing to share, because usually, again, like when you think of Deliveroo, you think about these consumer app experiences, and the kind of delivery and restaurant side is maybe a little bit more obscured, and you haven't really even seen what a restaurant uses to interact with Deliveroo. And one of the first things, and let me see if my sound is working. Did everyone hear that? Great. So that's actually the noise that a restaurant partner hears when they receive an order. And so obviously it will repeat a few times. And you know, for us here, you're hearing it the first time, it may actually sound like, oh, that could get really annoying. But I think the thing is if you know, are in the shoes of our partners, oftentimes that means, hey, like people are ordering your food, and it's actually a really great sound to be hearing, because it means that you're getting orders. And you're getting orders on traditionally a tablet. You may have seen these kind of on walls or behind bars in restaurants. And so again, like if you hear that noise next time you're out at a restaurant, or if you're walking down a high street, you'll now know, hey, that's the Deliveroo order that's coming in. And they're using this kind of tablet experience. Another thing that we really know from the design side and from user research is that actually one of the most important products that we make on the restaurant side is the printed ticket. And the reason this is because we know that restaurants really emphasize this in terms of how they work. It prints out, they can put it, they can prioritize it, they can understand when they need to make the food, when it's being collected by the rider. And this ticket is also intended to be included with the order, traditionally kind of stapled onto the bag along with it. And so it also kind of follows this food along with its journey, and it ends up with the consumer who, you know, might actually kind of check it to make sure, hey, actually everything is in this bag that I ordered. Recently, though, as well, we've extended this to these kind of integrated devices. They're really these kind of swish new things that, as you can see, are much smaller and much more compact, and they have their own printer for the tickets in the device themselves. These mock-ups are also showing on the right the kind of map view that restaurants can get to show when a delivery rider is near them, and so this really helps them make sure that they can prioritize. And as you can see in the middle as well, we have this kind of like, swim lane structure of, any riders that are waiting, all the food that you kind of need to be prepping now to prepare for the rider arrival, and then any scheduled orders that are prepared later. The other thing that we really firmly believe in is that our restaurant partners should be able to accept orders from anywhere, from any device. And so this is an example of what we call Restaurant Hub, which is a web product that allows partners to accept orders on any device through this web interface. And I'll be touching on Restaurant Hub a little bit throughout this presentation because the tool Menu Manager that I'll be showing off later is also in this area. Yeah, and this is an example of Restaurant Hub. It's pretty much like kind of the one-stop shop for restaurants to be able to manage their restaurants. So they can download invoices, they can set their opening hours. As I'll show you later, they can edit their menus, and they can also accept orders. And then lastly, last but not least, I want to actually show this. This isn't something I've actually designed at all. This is kind of the traditional point of sale or POS system that a lot of restaurants have. And again, because we think restaurants should be able to accept orders from any device really, we have a strong kind of inclination to also integrate with APIs. So we offer a POS API that will allow restaurant partners to actually accept Deliveroo orders directly on their existing setups. And so this is great, kind of just a great example to show with all the previous things that we've designed for as well, just the diversity of areas that we think through in terms of how we can kind of match the kitchens and the front of houses and the bars and everything in the inside of a restaurant, how they want to interact with us. And how they interact with us has obviously really changed in the last 6 months because of COVID-19. It's something that I mentioned before that has been, incredibly kind of humble and an amazing experience to work in this time, because restaurants are really hurting right now, as I think we all kind of know, especially as guidelines change and they have to kind of meet new realities. And I think you'd be forgiven to think that, this GIF here of Boris Johnson is actually maybe from his address just this past week, because we're kind of, again, in this kind of phase of uncertainty about how restaurants are going to be operating. But this is actually from March, when he explicitly mentioned using food delivery services to kind of combat the spread of COVID-19. And I think that meant that a lot of our restaurant partners had to kind of quickly think about, how do I become a kind of delivery only business when before maybe the vast majority of our business was with in-store customers? So they've had to quickly change their operations. And obviously, as we all have had to change our lives, these kind of workers and people in restaurants have really had to change how they work. And I just love these kind of shots to just show kind of what like the interior of a kitchen needs to look like now if you're socially distancing and, really being safe about what food and how you're handling things. And so just a quick fire thing of some of the things that we as Deliveroo have done. It's really been kind of a all hands on deck approach. I mean, everyone in the business from the beginnings of how when we started seeing how major COVID-19 was going to be has kind of pitched in. And one of the first things we did was launch contact-free delivery so that we could really limit the amount of contact that orders are having and try to keep everyone as healthy as possible. We also prepared guidelines similarly to what the images I just showed of what a really safe in-house handover for riders would also look like. And we've also given a lot of advice for restaurants on how to kind of convert their operations so that they could be delivery only in line with guidelines. Another thing that we did early on, as we realized that restaurants were facing unprecedented challenges, was we changed from bi-weekly payments to daily payments. And as you can imagine, that actually really helps with cash flow, because all of a sudden, every day you're starting to get the amount of money that you've made for those orders come in, and you can much more quickly plan kind of what you need to do in order to navigate difficulties like with suppliers and staff shortages, everything that you're kind of being faced with as a restaurant. And things like PPE, for instance, is a really good example of that as well. So this is kind of something that we worked with our packaging teams and our procurement teams in order to allow restaurants to afford anything they'll need to reopen safely and keep their customers safe and feeling confident. And we reduced heavily our packaging costs and worked with our food procurement team in order to kind of piece together kind of broken supply chains. So one of the biggest things, obviously, in the restaurant industry is who your suppliers are. Are they able to get the food, the ingredients that you need in time? And because of Deliveroo's scale, we've really been able to make sure that our partners can get access to the things that they needed at that difficult time. And another thing I wanted to mention is the social and TV ads that we ran that really featured local restaurants and told everyone that we're kind of still here to deliver, that these restaurants are still open, and just let the local communities know that their favorite restaurants are still delivering food. And that got lots of media coverage and also support for these restaurants as they needed it most. And most recently, one of our kind of biggest launches, the things that we shipped, has been table service, which is kind of the third tab in the app. So delivery, pickup, and table service, which is our safe, contact-free way of ordering in store and actually sitting at the table and having it brought to you, which has been kind of an amazing thing to collaborate between the kind of consumer and restaurant sides of the business. As you can imagine, we've kind of had to, really rethink how, the order manager we have can all of a sudden become kind of an in-store order manager. What table is the customer sitting at? Have they been served? And then also, what does it look like if we support the government's Eat Out to Help Out scheme and become kind of a multi-channel platform where, we can tell our delivery customers, hey, you can get a discount through Eat Out to Help Out by dining in at this restaurant with table service. So that's actually really recent, and I think it was just an amazing collaboration to get that out as quickly as possible so that we could kind of be part of that scheme. But now I want to turn over to, I think one of the things that I've been, one of the biggest projects that I've been able to work as part of, and especially with COVID-19, and that's Menu Manager. So menus traditionally at Deliveroo have been incredibly manual over the past. Traditionally, restaurants would send in a PDF or a photo of their menu, and then they'd wait a few days for them to be kind of manually entered before they could be onboarded and set live. And so obviously, kind of what are the problems with that, and what can we improve in that kind of experience? First of all, the process back then, as I mentioned, was incredibly manual and it took time. And the issue is that restaurants couldn't really predict how long that was going to be. It's kind of this black box. And also updates can kind of induce a lot of anxiety because you're kind of just waiting and you don't really know when it's going to be and when you can be ready. And in a pandemic, that's the last thing you want. So it kind of looks like this, oh, hey, here's our new menu. Can you change it? We're starting to get orders for things we no longer have. And then it's like, oh, hey, again, it's been 3 days. Any update on those menu changes at all? And you can imagine these emails start piling up and piling up. And then, what's worse for wear about that is that then updates can then come through incorrectly because, these obviously, typos and human error occur, but it kind of resets the clock on that process. So the second all of a sudden it's like, hey, you misspelled lasagna, like how could you do that? You then have to wait again and wait again to get that to happen. And so, restaurants fundamentally feel like they don't have any control over a thing that's really theirs. I mean, this is their food, this is their menu. And so they just, feel a little bit helpless about this process. And we saw that kind of in the research that we did. This is a snapshot of a Kano analysis that we ran. And sorry that I've had to blur out everything else, but I don't want to reveal all of our good ideas here. But as you can see in the kind of top right of the top performing thing, we can see that a self-serve menu management tool was the #1 requested feature or highest performing feature that our restaurant partners responded to in the survey. So yeah, this is something that obviously we've known that we really need to help out with. And it's really not ideal during a global pandemic. So luckily for us and for our partners, we were already quietly testing a new tool called Menu Manager. It was in alpha, actually just came out of alpha and into a beta with hundreds of restaurants. And the critical decision we made during COVID-19 is that we were going to absolutely expedite that launch and get it into the hands of partners as quickly as possible. And as you can imagine, that was one really big way that we could support restaurants, because all of a sudden, they're facing this nightmare of COVID-19, and we can turn around and say, hey, we're here with you. you know how, you know, you've wanted this functionality for so long. Well, we're going to give it to you at the moment you need it most. So I have a short video. And again, I'm not sure if the sound will work. I'll just go with it because it's only about like 20 or 30 seconds. So let's see what it looks like. Cool, so that was part of our product education when we launched, and I think it really sums up kind of what the tool is all about. It's that journey of, hey, I have had this idea for a new dish and I want to have my customers be able to order this thing. And so you can kind of see how you can add that through and really control your menu. So this is the tool as it is today. As you can see, it's all of your menus kind of in one place, and you can edit. You can also clone menus and experiment. You can publish to multiple restaurants. We went with a what you see is what you get approach to this. So it's you know, it's not just like a traditional back-end dashboard. It actually kind of mirrors the structure and the look of your menu on the apps and on the website. And we can do a lot here. We can also communicate some of like the data and the insights that we have. As you can see on the top bar, we can talk about, you know, is this a strong menu? You know, are you missing photos? You know, what else can you do to help this menu perform better? And then you can, you know, drag and drop items. You can move categories around. It's quite like a visual tool. And then when you're happy with any changes, you can just publish it directly and instantly to let your customers see the changes. Another thing that was quite thought out was the photo upload process. And one of our senior product designers, ironically also named Alex, and yeah, it's as confusing as it sounds to have two Alexes designed for the same tool. She really did an amazing job of you know, building out and scoping the photo upload flow for this product, so that, you know, our partners are really guided through what makes a good photo before they upload it. And then another thing is we can allow partners to give their customers choices and options about the food they have. So as you can see on the mobile device, you know, you can choose your sauce here. So you can build this out by, you know, creating the item and then also creating the options that go with that item. And I'm not sure if you noticed it, but at the top we have this what do you think of menus link. And you know, the thing that COVID has meant for us is we've lost our kind of close connection to partners in the user research side. So I've been over the last year and a half working at Deliveroo, just, you know, so lucky to sit in kitchens, to sit in front of houses, to sit in cafes and bars and everything, and just speak to restaurant owners and staff about how they use our tools. And obviously that's incredibly impossible right now. And so one of the ways we were really looking to kind of continue that spirit of user research is to bake in feedback directly as a kind of a top level item onto this tool. And so we asked, you know, our partners, what do you think of menus? And that goes to a Google form where they can kind of give us feedback. And that's linked up directly to a Slack channel. And this has been an incredible kind of pulse on like kind of how partners are using this tool. And I think the thing that's also been really impressive to me is how much involvement from our dev teams there's been in this Slack channel. So it's really common for me to come in the morning and open the Slack and see that, you know, engineers have already been discussing a problem that they've seen or ways of solving something, and really kind of being more part of the kind of research side of things earlier. And so this is just a snapshot. I mean, obviously this is a little bit biased because the feedback that I'm going to be sharing is pretty positive, including this one, which I love. They told us it's a real masterpiece and that we've Deliveroo'd the whole system. It's not all this positive. There are, you know, obviously some more critical feedback as well. But yeah, there's really insightful stuff here. I mean, things like, you know, changing the order of how those options I mentioned before appear. That's something that, you know, obviously was somewhat of a thing we were aware of, but we wouldn't really realize or know how to prioritize that. And then seeing that kind of persist in the feedback channel really means, okay, this is something that we need to get out there sooner rather than later. And then we've also seen feedback about more broadly in Restaurant Hub, functionality that isn't specifically tied to menus. And I think that really shows us that our partners kind of see Hub as like a holistic product where menus is part of it, but what about solving these issues as well? It's not just menu manager. And then, I mentioned that we expedited the tool. We actually chose to launch without the photo upload flow that I was talking about, just to get it out there as soon as possible. And so the overwhelming feedback, like, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of feedback forms were about, why don't you have photos? And it just meant that I've learned how to request photos in like 8 different languages. But again, talking about like the pulse of this feedback form, once we actually launched the photo upload flow, this feedback completely died down. So it's actually like a really good way to kind of modulate like how much feedback you're getting and understanding what partners need. So cool, I'll wrap up with just a few takeaways of Menu Manager and COVID. First of all, when things really feel beyond your control, I think that's the moment when you need to kind of have more control given to you than ever. So restaurants, faced with these, incredible circumstances, were able to now edit their menus themselves for the first time. And so it kind of matched the moment. And, they felt much more confident about the outlook of their business because all of a sudden they had this new tool. And it really unlocked an incredible amount of creativity because they were really, all of a sudden empowered to, use this tool for new things. And I like to kind of put this on a spectrum between kind of trivial edits on one end, critical edits on the other, and then experimental ones in the middle. So, trivial as in like kind of like fun things like the restaurant partner who took the time to add an emoji to every single category they had. Which was a really cool update to see. And then on the other side, critical ones, when VAT here in the UK was temporarily changed from 20% to 5%, you don't want to wait 3 days to change like something as critical as a tax rate. And so you can quickly change that there. And then in the middle, experimental, this is what I really love seeing. What were partners doing during COVID to kind of stand out? And in this case, this is a partner who was launching kind of romantic candlelit dinners that included candles in with the packaging. And before, they could have had this idea and then like, oh, I don't want to do that because it's going to take a week to get that menu updated. But now they can actually be like, let's do that. Why not? Let's try it. Let's launch it for a day, see how it does. If it doesn't sell, we can always take it off the menu because we can easily edit things. So that's kind of what I mean about, experimentation. And lastly, releasing things sooner, expediting and just getting it out there faster, and then kind of iterating and adding on the functionality that we know that the partners needed with that kind of baked in feedback structure, meant that we were shipping more, better cadence and rhythm, and that we had a kind of constant sense of, what our partners needed from us. And all of that kind of leads to, this great moment when you have a restaurant reach out to you and say, hey, Deliveroo added some new features. They're really good business partners. And now I can add or change things on my menu myself, which I think definitely deserves a kind of like socially distanced fist bump because, talking about helping restaurants help themselves, all of a sudden now we're being a good partner to, these restaurants and helping them weather the storm. So just to wrap up, I want to just thank a few people on our team who I kind of shamelessly stole some of their slides for this. So thanks to Sean, Ben, Alex, and Phil. We're really collaborative. We're a great team, which I think I have to mention. We're also hiring right now. We're hiring 2 senior product designers, with one of them having a particular focus on design systems. One of the traditions that we had before COVID was that you would get your welcome kit actually in a Deliveroo bag with the printed ticket telling you what your first day is going to be like. Unfortunately, with COVID, it's probably like your experience is going to be more like a Figma welcome card. This is the one that one of our recent joiners, Ben, got. So we'll definitely welcome you with open arms to Deliveroo as best we can in these times right now. And with that, I just want to thank you and thank UXPA for having me.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Alex. We have time, I think, for 1 or 2 questions, depending how quickly you can answer them. Can you see the Q&A chat, or would you like me to just randomly choose?
Let me pop it open here.
Okay, awesome.
Go for it. this. Okay, cool. Yeah, I can see it. How did the company prioritize the menu manager over all the other cool ideas that you guys probably have? If it wasn't for the pandemic, would the tool have been built? Great question. So the tool was already kind of in that kind of beta stage before the pandemic. And so I think it was that kind of like luck comes to the prepared mind moment where we were able to meet the moment because we already had it in development. I don't think it probably would have been possible if we had kind of seen the pandemic coming and been like, let's quickly build this like huge fundamental tool. And so it really helped us that we had kind of laid the groundwork with, you know, robust user testing. We built all of these kind of prototypes, and we went to, you know, 15 or 20 restaurants to actually get their feedback, not only here in the UK, but also in our international markets. So it really helped that we'd kind of laid the groundwork for that space. And I think it's something that we always knew we wanted to empower our partners with. Great question about prioritization. I mean, there's loads of things that, you know, obviously, as I showed in that Kano analysis, we're constantly thinking of what to do, but I don't think it was hard in this case because it's just been a consistent bit of feedback that we've gotten that this is an area that we could really like kind of shine in. And so, yeah, it would never be difficult to prioritize this, but like I said, it helped that we already had kind of gotten a head start in that space. And then can you talk a little bit more about partner education and what role does it come in launching new features? Great question as well. We have product market managers who work at Deliveroo as well. And that's the first time in a tech company I've actually been able to work with people who are in that kind of specialized role. And it's been an absolute privilege because having a kind of robust go-to-market plan for when you launch something can really differentiate, you know, how successful that launch is and how understanding, in our case, partners are of how to use the tool. And so that is absolutely paramount to what we do. And yeah, that's not only, you know, kind of on the restaurant side, but I think it's something that really differentiates kind of how we work. What's your process for reviewing all partner feedback on Slack? So the feedback that I showed, it also goes into, through Google Forms, it's in a sheet as well, and then it goes in Slack. And so those kind of are different ways of you know, kind of consuming that data. On the sheet, we have a little bit more of like a kind of quantitative approach of like looking at what the sentiment is and stuff like that. The Slack is really more just for kind of like a daily pulse. So I'll kind of come in and see, okay, there's been 9 new, you know, feedbacks that have come in, and how are they doing? Using threads on Slack is great for this because you can kind of, you know, thread something in on that that post and then start discussing it. And then you can also share it across channels. So Slack has actually been really good about raising awareness for bugs and issues, but also kind of getting the beginnings of a discussion with devs about, you know, what does it look like if we, you know, prioritize this feature next. And if there's time for one more, the last one is, what do you love most about working at Deliveroo and what UX skill you use the most? Cool question. So we have this kind of content research and design structure. And I think the thing that I kind of really value most about working at Deliveroo is that, you know, we see no kind of walls between those disciplines. I think in the past, especially in the design industry, there's been this kind of like weird kind of like distinction between like, am I a UI designer? Am I a UX designer? Am I a user researcher? Am I, you know, all these things that I think as time has gone on, we've gotten a little bit better about kind of understanding that like we're all kind of colleagues in this kind of process, in this design process, about, you know, reaching, you know, the best version of a product that we can find. And so I think that's the kind of UX skill for me that that's been really great is learning from, you know, the user researchers on our teams and the content designers on our teams about their disciplines and how much I can bring it into my own and how much they can learn from product designers as well. So it's just that kind of sense of collaboration and really not ever trying to say, well, I'm the product designer and therefore, you know, it's my way or the highway. And so I think, you know, saying actually, wow, the content is so much better after you've taken a pass on the Figma is like a really freeing sense of like kind of working more as a team. I don't know if I've taken too much time because I haven't been timing myself.
Amazing. Are you okay to answer the last question?
Sure. Is this the, do you automate the segmentation of feedback based on partner demographics? So great question. I'm trying to think of an example here because obviously this feedback channel, although there are some things that slot in that aren't menu manager related. This is kind of like a specific like menus oriented feedback channel. We have loads of other teams as well that are doing more kind of robust surveys of, you know, different partner types. As I mentioned, like the reason we use partner is because it's not, you know, one size fits all. And so we absolutely do have a kind of sense of what the kind of scale is for that. And obviously, you know, you have to speak to, you know, the CEO of a major, you know, quick service restaurant very differently than you would to, you know, someone who you're speaking to face to face in their kitchen. And so I think with that, you kind of put on different hats and understanding of different business types, because in this role, it really is about kind of meeting people in that marketplace of businesses. And understanding that, you know, these are kind of their livelihoods and their brands and, you know, their passions. I mean, they, you know, oftentimes, you know, the food that they make can also be kind of like a cultural expression of, you know, where they come from, or, you know, what they're trying to, you know, educate people about a culture. So I think in that sense, like we kind of enter these conversations and knowing that each of them is going to be tailored to the specific partner we're speaking to, just because otherwise, you know, if you're coming to a user testing session about a menu that it's all pizza or burgers, and you're at a Indian restaurant, you know, they're going to kind of dissociate from that experience of using the prototype, because they don't sell, you know, burgers, right? So I think that has meant that, you know, absolutely things are kind of segmented to make sure that they're as kind of realistic and, you know, as honoring to that kind of partner as we can be.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. If everyone wants to give a virtual round of applause for Alex, that'd be fantastic. Great. Alex, you could, yep, amazing. Ray, if you're okay to go ahead and share your screen, you may begin. Everyone, this is Roselle. She's from Gusto, and she'll be our last and final speaker.
Amazing. Thank you. Just going to share my screen. Cool. Can everyone see my screen? Awesome. I'm just gonna get my notes. Cool. Thank you, everyone. Amazing talks from Alex and Christina. Hard to follow, hard act to follow, I mean, rather. But thank you for persevering to the last talk. My talk is about what's behind the red box. And I'm Ray, product designer at Gusto. So just to go a little bit about me. So I started off at Samsung as my first job, just for a year while I was in uni. I was a web coordinator there, so mainly just focusing on like analytics and like optimizing landing pages. Then I had the bulk of my career at Graze, which is a snacking company in the UK. I was there for 3.5 years, starting off as an interaction designer before moving as a UX designer. And for a couple of months to a year, I was like the sole designer for Graze before I moved on and wanted to get agency experience. So I moved to a company called Big Light, where one of my major partners was actually another food company. So Break Brothers, it's a B2B food distributor in the UK. And after that, I kind of missed the in-house working model. So I moved back to Gusto, which is another food company. And this is just a little bit about the things that I love and enjoy. Sorry, vegans and vegetarians, look away. I'm a complete carnivore, so steak is my thing. Bubble tea, matcha latte, table tennis, I know, predictable. Gin and dogs. So just a little intro to me, now an intro into Gusto. In case you're not aware of what Gusto is, we are a meal kit service. So we offer an extensive range of recipes that changes weekly. You can choose up to 4 recipes for 4 people. We offer fresh and made to measure ingredients, so no food waste. And we deliver any day of the week. And our mission is to be the UK's most loved way to eat dinner. And that became even more important during this time, especially for customers who can't leave their households. So what is behind the red box? food. And that's my talk. No, not really. Of course, I'm going to take you through behind the scenes as to how we build up the red box. So to do that, I need to go a bit into the team structure. And before I do that, feel free to mention in the chat. I can't seem to see it, but let me know, or let the team know, like what kind of model do you guys operate in? Are you in a centralized design team model or an embedded, just to get a gauge in the room? Because Gusto used to be a centralized model, and we've moved quite fast since then, and now we're all have embedded teams with a designer in each team, which I'm going to take you through each one. So we offer with the tribe model. For those who are not familiar with the tribe model, we basically have squads within the models, and the tribes look after a particular area or domain within Gusto. Yes, all our squads are named after vegetables. So the first one is the growth tribe, which is responsible for the acquisition and retention. So the beetroots look after the sign-up journey. Shout out to Grace, I think is in the call. Rockets, that looks at retention. So how do we keep our customers engaged? And Haricos is the squad I'm involved with, and we look after customer success. So we make sure, like, all the customers that have problems, we are able to solve the root causes or able to deal with it swiftly. Then we have the menu tribe. The menu tribe is mainly focused on menu conversion and the menu experience. We have the radishes that are mainly focused on the menu. And then we have the turnips that builds on top of the menu experience, such as personalization. Parsnips looks after our recipe admin, and the daikons is our data science and recommendation engine team. Then you get the whole operations and fulfillment side in the supply tribe, carrots, pumpkins, pickles, and peas. So carrots are mainly focused with delivery, pumpkins with storing, stocking, pickles, forecasting, peas, picking and packing. So that's why the P for alliterations. And finally, we have the foundations tribe, which is mainly focused on quality and stability of platforms. And these are the potatoes, mushrooms, and truffles. Potatoes is for our platform, like AWS. Mushrooms are our mobile team, and the truffles is our IT team. Cool. So that's the squads within the tribes and the different areas we look into. We also have discovery teams. So the squads are embedded into discovery teams. So you have in a normal squad a product manager, product designer, and engineer. But depending on your tribe and the squad you're involved with, you work with a range of like the wider business. So it can go from brand, marketing, insights, data science, data analytics, and customer care. And we focus on a particular area. So for example, with Haricos, because we focus on customer success and the pain points of customers, we work quite closely with customer care team and the insights team. And it allows us just to have a better collaboration with the wider business, better visibility, greater autonomy as a team, because we know who to involve at the beginning through to the end of the process. And it allows for faster decision making. So you know exactly who you need to Slack to sign off things. And has anyone ever heard of I'm guessing quite a few have heard of the double diamond model. I'll briefly go through it, but let me know in the chat if you have or if you haven't, or if you guys use the double diamond model in your industries or companies. But yeah, I'm going to talk a bit about the discovery diamond first to begin with, which is designing the right thing. So how we do research at Gusto. This is an overly simplified journey. Forgive me for all my Gusto friends in this call. Our job is not this easy, but just to give like an example of the entire flow that a customer could go through when ordering from Gusto is they would order, an existing customer would order and browse recipes on the app. They'd place this order, the box would get delivered, and then they'll cook and enjoy their meals. And with that comes a range of like anxieties and questions, and especially if you're a new customer, just unsure of certain things. So for example, the menu tribe, some of the problems that they're facing is, what if my son has an allergy, or how long does it take to prep this recipe? And we have a common problem in Gusto is apparently we have too many chicken dishes in our variety range. And then for placing an order, this spans multiple squads in the growth tribe because it affects existing customers and how they order. So some customers don't understand that we're a subscription service. So when they place their first order, they're like, why do I have multiple upcoming orders that I need to choose from? Some question, what happens if I don't choose recipes? And also don't know what our cutoffs are. So what's the latest they can edit their recipes? And then delivering the box. As you can imagine, especially during these times, customers just don't know when it's going to arrive, or this is less of a problem, not being in to collect the order, but it was a problem pre-COVID. And also having the box or ingredients being damaged. And finally, the last set of problems when you're cooking a Gusto recipe is you might find out an ingredient is missing, or when you finally finish cooking, you realize you don't really like the taste of this recipe, or there's too much in this portion. Can I save this for later? Can I freeze this? As you can see, there's so much problem space, so much opportunity. So the synthesis is quite important as to which opportunity we decide to go for within each tribe and each squad. So how we do this, I'm not sure how familiar everyone is with the opportunity solutions tree, but this is quite a common model or framework that we use by Teresa Torres to help us get full visibility of all the opportunities we have within Gusto. So before mapping out this tree, we make sure we gather all the insights, all the research from the digital product team, the insights team, any data points that we may have prior to any research, and map out these opportunities in this tree. So I just gave an example of my team's tree, a very simplified version. So let's say one of the main goals is to reduce the number of complaints of customers. So then all the problem spaces that we have, we would map out at the next level. So I don't know when my box will arrive, or I want to manage my orders more easily. And then after that, we develop hypotheses into solving these problems. So we might say, oh, we need to display tracking information for the customer, or give notification updates, display cutoff times for managing the orders, or displaying skip boxes more prominently if you don't want to receive your box the next week. And then there's loads of hypotheses. And again, how do you prioritize those? So again, looking at data, looking at mapping out all the opportunities in this map allows us to see full visibility of all the things that we could approach. And we try to narrow those down. Cool. Then going into delivery. So narrowing it down, what also kind of helps us is the ideation stage is like seeing how can we solve these problems, and also the building phase, which I'll go through in a second. But the second diamond is essentially like designing things right. So now that you know what things you want to design, how can we design it to the best of our abilities so that it's the most value to the customer and to the business. So ideation, we've had to change this the most since lockdown. I gave an example of a how might we statement just to show you our process. So one of our statements might be, how might we make it easier for customers to self-serve if we can't get through to them? And to be able to solve that opportunity, we heavily invested in a new tool called Miro. I don't know if anyone else uses Miro, but like it's our godsend in Gusto. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to like collaborate or do workshops remotely without it. So any form of workshop doesn't have to be ideation, but this allows us to collaborate with, again, the whole team. So like engineers gets involved, managers, the customer care team, iOS, Android, just to ensure that all the ideas are in the room. And usually then that will help us narrow down which one can help us solve multiple opportunities. So this is just an example of one of the opportunities we decided to prioritize, designing a new help center. And what these are the main reasons why we decided to prioritize this solution to solve our problem, which was how might we get more customers to be able to self-serve. The customer value is we help to encourage more logins so then we can surface more relevant resolutions for our customers. So for example, we can surface their orders if they're logged in. We can easily find a solution to their problem as well, depending on the time they view the Gusto app or website. And we also can give faster responses and compensation to their issues. The business value of that is it reduces the number of contacts into our customer care team. We automate the resolutions so the agents can focus on other bigger issues. And also, admittedly, tracking wasn't so good in our previous help center. We were using Zendesk, and it was really, really tough to really narrow down like where the opportunity areas are there. So building this new help center allows us to add new tracking that we can use to further optimize for the future or iterate on this solution. And as Alex mentioned, we use quite Figma at Gusto as well. Not just product designers, we also try to encourage like engineers, the brand designers to co-collaborate with us at this space because it changes in real time and we can see like all the ideas foster. So we had to build a prototype, a quick one in Figma, and we use Lookback to talk to our customers. And this helps us to also record it and allows the team to also observe without the customer feeling overwhelmed that they had like 30 people watching them. Giving the team time to also question the prototype and me to be able to ask the question to the customer. And then comes to build. So we have a design system. Well, the start of a design system in Figma, but the UI component library that we're using is a storybook and we named it Zest. And one of the struggles that we're having at the moment is defining what we build as a reusable component versus something that we're using just for an A/B test. This is still a work in progress, but fundamentally, what we build in Zest is something we know will be there for the long time. So things like buttons, things like typography, grids, layouts, stuff like that. And anything else we feel like we can build as part of an A/B test and seeing if it works. And if it does, then follow up and building it into Zest. We're trialing it, building it on a micro front end. So apologies, engineers in the room. I can't answer any questions on micro front ends, but we have a developer from Gusto here if you have any questions regarding that. But we're trialing it because it's a faster way for us to be able to build out these components into the pages for our customers. And essentially, these were the results from our A/B testing. I can't release the numbers exactly because this is quite a recent test, but we increased the amount of people who logged in as customers. So they were able to see their orders and raise the relevant issue regarding it. We're able to track now and see where drop-off happens. So where customers are clicking into, why they're not accepting credits, or they can't find a certain resolution. So then now we can optimize in the future where the most problem areas happen. And fundamentally for the business, we decrease the number of contacts to our customer care team. Cool, sorry, I whizzed through that. But yeah, essentially I couldn't fit these ones in, but these were questions that were asked from the team and from the community. So I wanted to answer some of those questions at what other initiatives that we're doing within Gusto, especially during this time. And one of them is a big focus on sustainability. So we have this new eco chill box, which the supply tribe was involved with building up, and it's 100% cardboard box, which keeps your food cool for 24 hours. So even though you're not in, your box could be left out the door, assuming that you trust your neighbors. There's also hundreds of SKUs that we're converting to carded paper. So like our rice packets are now in card, pasta packets soon in card, stuff like that. And any time we can remove plastic even from fresh ingredients, we do. And in total, during this time, I'm quite impressed that the team managed to reduce plastic by 50% this year. And then capacity. As you saw, it was quite a big theme with the food industry that delivery is a must, especially like to avoid and keep everyone safe. So initiative that the team did within Gusto was a Chosen by Gusto feature where we offer a pre-selected amount of recipes for 4 people. And it's our 3 most popular recipes. So they don't have to go through the website, but we send it out to key workers and our loyal customers that are not able to order through our website because we've reached our capacity and we can no longer take more orders because at the time we had limited capacity within our factories. So this allowed us to feed thousands of additional homes on top of our Gusto website. And lastly, we supported local businesses. So a small group within Gusto was decided it'd be a cool idea to connect customers with our local businesses. So they voluntarily worked nights and weekends, and they roughly built this in 10 days. And it just increased the business awareness of local shops that deliver near to you. So allowing customers to, utilize the businesses that they won't usually do because they would go out to the shops, but also like if we do get out of COVID soon and get back to normality, maybe even start visiting these stores. And of course I had to have a we're hiring side. So we have a lot of open roles. We're hiring for a product designer within our growth squad, a head of product design across the tribes, product manager within the growth squad, senior product manager in the growth squad. As you can see, our growth squad is growing, and all engineering levels. So from junior to head of. And this is, yes, if you want to be part of our Gusto community, please reach out. And that's me.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ray. If anyone would like to answer any questions, please feel free to either type them in to the Q&A or raise your hand and we'll be able to unmute you so you can answer your question. I also have good news and bad news. Good news is that Chris, our president, is back online after a short hiatus of his laptop not complying with him. And bad news is we are coming to an end. We've gone a little bit over, but that's totally okay because we're all remote. But yeah, if anyone has any questions for Ray, please feel free to reach out.
No questions?
Ray, my partner actually had a question, and his question was, how do you deal with, he was being nosy and listening in while washing dishes. His question was, how do you deal with couples who have, how do you design for couples who basically have different eating styles? So maybe vegan versus meat eater, etc. How does that work?
That's a very interesting question. I won't call out, like I was going to call out Teresa. I don't know if you want to answer that question. She's on the call, but she's a part of the menu tribe. So she's focusing on like how, like the behaviors of like couples and families and how they choose their recipes. At the moment, we only have one profile. So you can only choose for the household, but that's actually one of the, maybe a potential opportunity they could go into. And what we've seen from research is that couples in particular like to choose together. So often one partner would choose 2 and the other partner would choose 2, and that's how they would get a middle ground. But we are looking into like how do we optimize for different taste preferences and dietary preferences. Yeah.
I think there's one more in the Q&A panel.
Yeah. Who's your favorite Gustonian? I am not going to answer that question because there's multiple Gustonians in this call, but you're definitely one of my favorites.
I think Sarah has a good question related to competitors. So, I mean, there are other providers out there who offer a similar service, and I was on a team meeting earlier this week, and it seemed to be a 50-50 split between the two. So, yeah, I mean, I guess the question is, do you look at your competitors and what they're doing, or is it basically, do you have your own strategy of what you're doing?
We definitely do a lot of competitor analysis, and we have an insights team that compares us to our competitors and how we're doing across different scores. And actually, we internally don't think of, I have a feeling maybe this is HelloFresh or Mindful Chef that you may have tried, Sarah. We actually don't consider them as our competitors. We actually saying that Waitrose is one of our competitors, so groceries, because we're trying to dominate that market more so than the meal kit service. So we're trying to optimize, like, how can we feed the nation, not just delivering on meals for the recipes, but like on top of. So yeah, that's how we're looking into it.
Thank you. Are there any final questions? If not, I would like to, oh, yeah, we have one. We do, we have a final one. How often do you check the analytics? You check the performance of any feature?
As a team, we're quite nosy, so we actually check on a daily basis, which is wrong. I know you're meant to check it once the test concludes, but we do check it. Now that we have analysts dedicated to each tribe, we check it more often with them, and like we don't like analyze the results until the test has concluded. But yeah, we monitor it on a daily basis, especially during this time, because it can fluctuate. Sometimes we actually do make a call to stop a test if it really harms the customer and the business. Yeah, I hope that answers your question, Arul.
Thank you. I think we have obviously gone over because of the technical difficulties, and apologies for that. So I'd like to thank all our speakers tonight, and also Annalisa for putting the event together. I know she's on the call, but has been busy at work, I think, throughout this. So yeah, thank you everyone. I think it's been a really great session, a great example of how what we mentioned at the start about how we're all adapting and how service providers are offering new features. And I just hope we can offer some discount vouchers to our attendees. Maybe that's something we could organise, I don't know. But thank you all, and hopefully we will see you all next month. Thank you.